I'm always excited for new experiences at Disney, but particularly so when they involve art. So I was pretty happy to snag a fast pass for the new animation experience at Animal Kingdom. Honestly, until fairly recently, Animal Kingdom was not a high priority for us park-wise. We loved Everest, we liked Dinosaur, a couple of the other rides were okay, we liked to do a safari on occasion, but until Pandora opened, it was at best sort of a half-day kind of park for us. And now, with Pandora, as awesome as it is, unless you can snag a fast pass for Flight of Passage, it's really not a huge priority still for us to hit up that park, at least not to spend a ton of time there. But recently, we did manage to snag that very coveted Flight of Passage Fast Pass. We were scheduling the rest of the day and figuring out the rest of our Fast Passes when the animation experience at Rafiki's Planet Watch popped up. Obviously, I was super excited, my husband slightly less so, but he is nothing if not loving and accommodating, so he agreed to come along. I'm honestly not sure if we've ever actually gone out to the conservation station before this time. There is that train ride out there that I feel should have been like super familiar if I'd ever done that even once. It maybe seemed slightly familiar, but I'm honestly feeling like maybe I've just seen it in enough videos of other people's YouTube channels. I don't know, it did seem only ever so slightly familiar, so I'm pretty sure we'd never made it out there before. Judging by the crowds while we were there, I'm not sure you necessarily need a fast pass for this one, but if it's popping up and you have nothing else you want to take, go for it, or if you've already done your 3 and it's a bonus, awesome. Those are always good to get those bonus fast passes, but be warned, this is not the kind of event or fast pass that you can just show up to on a whim super quick. Once you get into the Africa section of Animal Kingdom, you'll be able to follow the signs pretty easily to the Rafiki Planet Watch. It's kind of back in the corner near the Kilimanjaro Safari, but there will be a big gate that you can walk through. It's very clearly labeled Rafiki's Planet Watch, super big. Once you get through that gateway, you're going to have a very, very short little walk to a train station where they will queue you up. It's one of those big mass queues, just a lot of you standing in one big pin, sort of. It's not a sort of weaving queue like, say, for the actual safari. It's definitely just a big fenced-in area where they sort of squeeze you all in and you kind of hope from there. So once you've made it to the back of Africa and found the Rafiki's Planet Watch, walked to the train station, and if you're like us, just missed a train, so now you have a pretty decent wait waiting for the train to come back, then you have to wait for the people that are on the train to get off, because there's only the 2 stops, so everyone on that train is getting off, and then you have to wait for the entire train to load, and then finally you take the train ride back to the conservation station. The train ride itself was actually kind of interesting. You move at a pretty decent clip, and since you're not constantly stopping, you're constantly moving, so once the train starts to go, it stays pretty cool no matter how hot the day is, and let me tell you, it was scorching that day. And on the way, you can see some really interesting things. You'll see some of the behind-the-scenes buildings for the containment and treatment of the animals. You may actually kind of luck out and see some actual animals on the way. For instance, we saw a cute little ostrich that was just hanging out right there by the train tracks, just as if he was waiting for us to come by and take his picture. Now, finally, once you get off the train, again, it's the only stop, so everybody gets off the train. Then again, there is another short walk, a little bit more than there was to get to the train station, but it's not very long, and it's pretty well shaded by trees, so it's fairly cool. There are some like wilderness explorer badge opportunities and sort of little educational activities along the walk, so if you've got the little kiddos and you're not really rushing to get to your fast pass, it can be a nice sort of leisurely, relaxing stroll, and it immediately kicks you out so that on the left is going to be the petting zoo, and on your right will be a little gift shop, and that sort of herd you into the building where the animation experience is. They're the typical columns to scan your magic band for your fast pass, and then they're going to direct you around the corner to where the actual class is. They do seat you. You don't really get to pick a good seat, but I'm honestly not sure there's a bad seat in the house. They have plenty of very large screen TVs up that are going to show exactly what the animator is doing, nice and blown up, and they're pretty high up. So unless you're very tiny with someone very tall in front of you, you're going to be able to see okay. And even if you can't see one that's right in front of you, there are other screens all lined up along the front, so everybody should be able to keep up. Once they introduce the artist, there is a very short little educational video that's going to tie into the character that you're drawing. Apparently they do different characters. They don't always draw the same one. I don't think there's any way to really choose which one you get unless you're willing to sit around and wait for them to do the next one. We really weren't that picky. We were drawing little baby Simba, and I thought that would be adorable, so it's really up to you. You could probably look into it a little bit more if for some reason you really don't like the character that they've chosen, but I don't know that you're going to have a lot of say in that. The video was pretty short and it was actually kind of entertaining. It talked about lions in general, their sort of pack behaviors and sort of distinguishing features, and then it tied it into the actual Kilimanjaro lions there on the safari at Animal Kingdom. It talked about how Disney animators use live animals for reference. It was really kind of cool. If you're worried about not being very artistic, don't be. I know my husband was. At first he did not really think he was going to actually participate. I guess he thought he was just going to sit there and watch me draw, but I insisted. I'm like, no, you should try. Why not? And he did, and he still thinks he didn't do a very good job, but I was pretty impressed. They did a really good job of simplifying the entire process. You were given a sheet of paper with some little blue guidelines, so they won't be super obtrusive on the finished product, but they will give someone who doesn't have a really good artistic eye a really great starting point. Then the artist literally does walk you through step by step. He goes at a pretty constant, steady pace, so if you really dawdle along and get stuck on something, you might get a little behind, but everyone around me seemed to keep up pretty well. He does a really good job of explaining it. Everything he draws is projected right up onto all those screens, so you can see exactly what he's doing. And while he does keep moving pretty steadily, he's certainly not rushing the process. I was a little busy trying to not only do my own drawing, but also hold my camera and get some shots for you guys. So I didn't really get to watch the people around me, but as far as I could tell, everybody did a pretty good job of keeping up and finishing their drawings. So I wouldn't be worried about falling behind or it being too hard. As I said, my husband wasn't super hopeful about his end product, and I know at the beginning he was super suspicious. At the end, he still wasn't particularly proud, but I don't know, what do you think? I think he ended up with a pretty cute Simba, and it looks very comparable, I think, to my own. As we were leaving the class, it spit us out onto a little courtyard where we just happened to come out just as they were starting up a little demonstration with some of the birds that they train right there in the park. It was really kind of cool, so if you happen to catch it or maybe just want to ask around, see when the times are and hang out and wait for it, it was definitely worth it. Very hands-on, up-close exposure to several different birds that are trained with some cool tricks. They actually got a few different volunteers from the audience. Really interesting, and we thought it was kind of fun, and there were some seats there, so after the class we could just sort of sit and relax and watch the cute birds. After watching the bird demonstration, we just walked back down the same path that we had taken from the train station, waited in line, and boarded the train back to the main portion of the park. You are, of course, coming in and going back in different directions. You're going to see different buildings, so it is a little bit more entertaining. It's not like you're seeing the same stuff that you just saw on the way out, especially because the train cars are actually all the seats facing in one direction, so you don't see anything behind you. The back of the car is solid, so it's definitely nice to get a little bit different of a view since you're kind of a captive audience at this point. So if you're pressed for time at the Animal Kingdom, the animation experience might not be the best bet for you. There's a little bit of walking back and forth, there's waiting at the stations, and then the actual train rides, and of course the actual class takes several minutes. But if you've got the extra time, it was a really fun little experience, and it's free and you get a great little souvenir out of it. It was actually a really good time. We enjoyed it, had a lot of fun, and if you're not rushed, the little bit of walk, the nice little train ride, it was actually kind of a nice, chill, sort of fun afternoon. We had a lot of fun, and I bet you will too. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll like and subscribe down below. Ring the little bell to get notifications every time I upload a video like this, or maybe sometimes very different. I hope you had a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.